Hello and welcome to day 3 of the Coppafeel knit along technique videos. Today I'm going to tell you a lot more about actually working the Intarsia technique, which is how we put together the main body of the bandana. Now, we have already worked up to row 25 of our chart, and up to this point we've only needed to use one colour. Now on row 26 we are going to introduce a second shade. Now I want first of all to explain to you a little bit about the difference between Intarsia and stranded colour work. Stranded colour work also usually has more than one colour on a row, and most frequently two colours on a row. And to work stranded colour work, both those colours are worked across the entirety of the work. So you can see here from the back of this sleeveless pullover that where I've got two colours, both colours travel right around the body of the work, and that creates a double thickness of fabric basically. Now with Intarsia you're actually doing the exact opposite. You really do not want there to be more than one colour being used in any one section, and this creates a single layer flat fabric. And to do that we have to use multiple balls of wool wherever an additional colour is being used. So the easiest thing is to demonstrate that really, and I'm going to do that over the next couple of rows of the chart. And before we start, if we look at the chart, we can see that on row 26 we introduce yarn B, which is our pink, and then on row 27 we introduce colour pink again at the other end of the chart, but with our gold in between. So within 2 rows we're going to need 2 small balls of the pink yarn. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, the first half of the bandana, which is basically the entirety of chart A, I've deliberately kept quite simple, and you would only need 2 balls of pink at any point. So actually you could just use your one mini ball and your larger ball to do this entire section, but I'm just going to quickly show you from mine how to make yourself a little butterfly of yarn from which you then work from. It's very, very simple, and you are just wrapping the yarn round your fingers to basically create a butterfly shape. So round and round like so to make a little butterfly, and you can go around 2 fingers or 4 fingers, whatever size you would like the butterfly to be. And when it's as big as you think you want it to be, take it off your fingers if you possibly can, and then just wrap the yarn around the centre, and that gives you your little butterfly to work from. And the yarn comes from here as you're working with it. Now you can also of course get little spools to wrap your yarn around. You could also make those from cardboard if you prefer. I tend to quite like just to use the yarn because there's no sort of clanking and clinking of the bobbins or the spools at the back of the work. And with something like this particular piece, it's never going to get big enough to be a problem really to just use the yarns. So I would say just go ahead and work with the yarn itself rather than worrying about getting spools, but by all means if you want to, give it a go. But the idea with the butterflies is that it comes from here and it slowly unwinds, and it just stops it all unravelling into one great big mess. So let's make a start then. Let's get my knitting ready. And the way I have worked the pattern is to try and keep things simple. I have added colours or additional colours towards the end of rows, never at the beginning. And that's just so that you don't have to mess around trying to do the slip stitch I-cord and change colour or add a colour all at the beginning of a row. So on every row of the charts, you will only be adding colour at the ends of either the right side or the wrong side row, or potentially in the middle, but not usually at the beginning. Row 25 I think I still need to do now, and then I will be joining in my colour on row 26. So let me just quickly work right to the end of this particular row. We're not going to introduce a colour on this one. So 3 slip stitches, yarn over, and then knit right to the end. And then when we get to the joining in, I'll slow down and you can see a bit clearer what I'm doing. So that's the end of row 25. So row 26 is a wrong side row. Oops, let's just untangle my ball there from wrapped around my circular needle. So I'm going to slip my first 3 stitches. And of course there's no yarn over at this side because it's the wrong side row. And we just keep going till we get to the point where we're joining in. So we're actually just joining in on the last 2 stitches at this point. So we go, we're just going to get to the last 2. Okay, so let's get our little ball of yarn. We're going to zoom in a bit so you can get a better look. Now, with Intarsia, you don't have to go to any fancy lengths and tie knots or anything of that nature to start working with the new colour. That's literally exactly what you do. You just start working with the new colour. So we just purl 1. And then what I would do is just take our other yarn and lay it over the one that we are going to be using. So you can see there I've laid the gold over the pink, and then the pink is going to come up from underneath the gold, and that secures everything. So we turn our work around and we now have two pinks at the end of our row. Hopefully you can see that okay. But I'm going to do some more now and it'll be more obvious. So obviously, because we're now at the beginning of a row, we are going to do our I-cord with the pink yarn. Now on the chart, to try and make things clear, we had to make a choice of whether we showed of how we showed the slipped stitches. So if you take a look at your chart on row 27, you will see that underneath the sort of little V symbol for the slipped stitches, the colour that is shown is the colour of the stitch as it was on the row below, and therefore the colour that you are slipping. So on this occasion, it's 1, 2 pink, and the third one is a gold. So that should match the chart, but of course we're now using the pink, and so it's our pink that we bring forward to do our yarn over, and then we make 1 stitch with the pink. And there we go. Now we're going to move back to our gold, and we're going to knit in gold to the last 3 stitches. So again, I'm just going to try and turn this round to sort of show you the process as though you were looking at the back of my work. We lay the pink down and we bring the gold up to use, but we'll be doing that on this side of the work. So the pink is down. This is quite tricky because we're on the wrong side. The pink just gets laid down and the gold just gets brought up and across, ready to knit. And there we go. So now we just work with the gold to the last 3 stitches. Once we've established both of these, I'll do a couple of rows where you can actually just see me crossing the yarns over, and it's a little easier to see. You don't need to worry about the ends. The ends will get darned in at the end. And you can also tighten things up as you're going along just by giving things a little pull if necessary. So we're working again to the last 3 stitches this time, and now we're once again going to introduce pink. Now obviously if this was standard colour work, we'd have carried the pink from over here behind the stitches all the way to the other side. Right, I'm about to now add the second shade of pink, and as I said, because of the fact that we're only going to use 2, I'm just going to use my original ball. So I'm just going to wrap my little tiny butterfly back onto my ball so I don't have any waste, and then give myself a length. If you always think about the tail, at this point it needs to be long enough to put a darning needle, to thread a darning needle, and then have some yarn to darn in afterwards. Now again, just to start, we literally just knit the first stitch. So you're just going to knit that first stitch. I always tend to put my yarn into the needle, ready to go. And then I would just bring the gold over the yellow, sorry, gold over the pink, and then bring the pink up so that they've crossed over each other. I'm hoping you can see that okay. There we go. And now the pink is going to come across and catch or wrap around the gold, and then we're going to knit the last stitch. So there we go. We now have pink at each end with gold in the middle. You don't need to worry about that one random gold stitch. That is the slipped stitch. So when we come back to this side and we knit in pink over it, it will just then become pink. Now I'm going to work the next row, which is row 28. So that's an even numbered row, and it's therefore a wrong side row. Now there are things that you can do with Intarsia to try and reduce the sort of the twisting going on at the back. Because nearly this entire half of the bandana we only have 1 or 2 balls on our needle, we don't really need to worry about that too much. But when we get to the decrease half, I will show you a couple of options in terms of yarn management and how to sort of minimise the amount of twisting that goes on, because we do have a couple of a few rows on the chart B where we do have 4 or 5, and I think at one point even 6 little balls in use. Not for long, but it can get a little bit tangly. So I'm going to now purl row 28 and we can get a better view of what's going on. So normally I just sort of pop my yarns into the same order as they need to be for using. So there we go. I'm going to take my needle round the back, and here we go. I'm all in order and ready to go. So row 28, we have to remember to do our I cord. Don't forget, just because it's now a different colour. We still need to make the I-cord, and we're going to pull it tight like we did before, and this time we've just got one more stitch to knit in pink. Now you can see here that stitch is stretched a little bit, so all I do is just give the tail a little tidy up as we go. As I say, that will be darned in afterwards, and then to knit with the gold, we just lay the pink down, and because we're on the wrong side, we just bring the gold across and start working with the gold, and this way you won't get any gaps between the stitches. Now at the other end we're actually going to knit, let me see, 4, 5, 7 in pink. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to only need to knit now another 6 in gold. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now we're only bringing the pink across 2 stitches, so that's nice and straightforward. So we're just going to lay down our pink, our yellow, keep calling them each other, and we're going to bring the pink up from underneath the yellowy gold, and that way it traps the gold and makes sure that we don't have any holes. And then just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Again, if that gets a little loose, just give it a bit of a pull. So I'm going to turn the work round, and let's take a look at what we've now got. Try and put that in. My light is being slightly dodgy today, so I'm sorry about that. But I wanted to make sure we got the tutorial filmed. So hopefully you can see there that we've got 7 pinks at this end, and then 4 pinks at this end. So the next row we basically use our gold for the last time, and then it will be all pink for a little while. So you can see it's not over challenging, whilst you're increasing the stitches to the maximum, keeping the amount of colour changes to a minimum. So our next row, which is row 29, is again slip 3 pink, pull it tight, bring the yarn over, and then we're going to knit to the same position that we were before, and now we're going to add another 3 and then just knit 3 gold stitches. So what we can do here if we want, so that we're not dragging the 3 gold stitches across, we can actually cross these over. So what we would do here now is we would lay the gold over the pink at this point, and then bring the pink up and knit with it, and that just stops you getting any ugly sort of stretching or gaps here at the back. So what you do need to do with Intarsia, probably more than you need to do with standard colour work, for example, is you do need to think ahead. You do need to look at the row ahead and think what's going to happen and what can I do to prepare for it, and make sure that you put the yarn in the most convenient place. So I've knitted my 3 extra pinks, and now I'm going to knit 3 gold. So I'm going to move my gold, lay down my pink, and bring the gold across, and just knit 1, 2, 3, and we've finished with the gold now, but we're going to use our other pink ball to work to the end. So let's get hold of our second pink ball now. What I didn't do at the end of the last row, which I should have done, was make sure that I carried my pink to where it wants to be. So for this, on this occasion, all I'm going to do is get my length and I'm going to pull it across, but really what I would suggest is that I should break that and reintroduce it, but with something like a bandana it's no big deal. Or I could alternatively bring that yarn across and just knit across those 3 stitches, or pass it across those 3 stitches, which is the equivalent of, which is probably better than moving it across 5 at this end. So I think that might be what I will do just for this one row. You can occasionally do that when you're only passing the yarn across 1 or 2 stitches, but really it's the thinking ahead that counts most. I should have paid attention to that, but I'll show you how to think ahead a bit more when we get to it, get to some more examples. But rather than taking this yarn to the end and ending up with an end on the I-cord, which is what we're trying to avoid, I'm going to cross those 2 pinks over each other and use the pink that we then want to continue working with. So we will now knit 4 and we're at the end. And this is what I sort of meant with this one. From this point on, for, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, you're only going to be using pink. So we're probably better with this larger ball to do full rows with. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to turn the work over and I can just remove the yarns that I'm not going to use. So the gold is completely finished with now. So I'm going to leave an end probably about a good 10 centimetres long. Just, you can use scissors if you prefer, obviously. Snap that one, put the gold to one side, and then my little skein of pink I also don't need anymore, so I'm just going to snap that one off and remove that one as well. And there we go. Keeps the work easier to manage if you remove the yarns that you don't need. And now we're going to just knit 5 rows all in the one colour. So I'll be back to you in a moment and I will just show you then how to introduce the next colour, which is yarn C, which is on row 34. Okay, so there we go. I have now worked row 33 and you can see we have a nice section of pink and you can see where the 2 have joined together and there are no gaps. On the wrong side, you can just see here how they interact with each other and how we just have one layer rather than 2. And so I'm going to go back to my work and I'm just going to do row 34, which is introducing yarn C, which is the sort of the red shade. Now, yarn C only gets used in one section, I think. Certainly for, yeah, it does. It only gets used in one section pretty much throughout this chart, I think. So we only really need 1 ball of row C, of yarn C. And again, we're joining in at the end of row 34. So I'm going to slip 3 stitches, pull it tight, and then purl. And I'm going to work to the last 2 stitches and then join in the red. So last 2 stitches, here we go. So it's pretty much identical to what we did on the last joining in. Get ourselves some yarn, give ourselves a good tail for darning in afterwards, which I will obviously show you how I approach that, and then just purl. And then before I do the second one, I just lay the pink over the red so that they cross over each other, and then just purl with the red. And then bring the red to the right and the pink to the left, because it's the red we're going to be using first on row 35. Now again with this one, we're going to be slipping 2 red stitches and then a pink stitch, so don't worry about that. And then we're going to do our yarn over in the red and then work in the pink to the end. So we're going to slip 1, 2, 3, pull our yarn tight, do our yarn over, and then, oops, knit 1 in red, put our needle through the next stitch, and then cross over our red by laying it down, and pick up our pink and pull it across, and then we're knitting all the way to the end in pink. Now most of this is staggered quite nicely with just the pink reducing and the red increasing on every 2 or 1 stitches in, so you don't really need to worry about moving the yarn across to prepare the red. You can just bring that across on the next row, and then when we get to row 42 you will be adding in some of the darkest shade of gold, so for a short time you will then have 3 colours on the needle, but you would work them exactly the same as you've done with the 2 shades of pink. You would just have the sort of bronzy colour, the red, and then the pink. And that really is it. So the goal now is just to keep going, just keep knitting, just keep getting comfortable with the Intarsia technique, and I will see you next time with some more guidance over your Intarsia knitting. Bye bye for now.